The NFL likes to sell itself as a billion-dollar empire built on contracts, salary caps, and rulebooks, but the truth is far darker, quieter, and far more powerful. Long before the commissioner hands down a fine or a coach calls a play, the real decisions about who belongs in this league are made behind closed locker room doors. Every player who steps onto an NFL roster enters into a second invisible contract, one that determines whether he will be protected, trusted, or slowly pushed out. This agreement isn't written on paper, but every veteran knows it by heart. Break it, and no amount of talent will save you. The moment a rookie walks into the locker room, the clock starts ticking. It doesn't matter if he was the top pick in the draft or a walk-on who clawed his way onto the roster. Inside that room, his college career means nothing. The veterans are watching everything, from how he dresses to how he speaks, to whether he makes eye contact. Confidence is respected, but entitlement is fatal. The league has chewed up countless first-round picks who arrived thinking they were stars instead of servants. The fastest way to disappear in the NFL isn't to be bad at football. It's to be bad at understanding the room. One of the first things rookies learn is that power in the locker room doesn't look the way it does on TV. It isn't always the quarterback or the highest paid player. Often, it's the veteran who controls the vibe. In many locker rooms, that power comes in the form of something that seems trivial, but is treated like a throne: the music. The player who controls the speakers decides the emotional temperature of the entire team. Loud trap music can turn a room into a war zone. Slow R&B can calm nerves after a brutal loss. Country music can feel like a middle finger to younger players. When the wrong person touches the aux cord, the reaction is immediate. Veterans have been known to yank cables out of walls and throw phones across rooms just to make a point. The message is always the same. You don't get to shape the culture until you've earned the right to be there. Earning that right requires silence. Rookies are expected to speak only when spoken to. They don't joke with veterans. They don't argue. They don't explain themselves. If a coach chews them out unfairly, they take it. If a teammate snaps at them, they swallow it. This isn't hazing for the sake of cruelty. It's a stress test. The NFL is chaos. And if you can't handle being humbled in a locker room, you won't survive Sundays when 300-pound men are trying to tear you apart on national television. Every team also runs its own internal court system, and it is far more ruthless than anything the league office could ever enforce. Known as Kangaroo Court, it's a player-run tribunal that fines teammates for breaking the code. Being late to a meeting costs money. Missing a workout costs money. Showing up unprepared costs money. But the biggest fines come when someone violates trust. Snitching is the ultimate crime. Players who go to coaches about teammates are immediately labeled untrustworthy. Once that happens, the room closes off. Conversations stop when you walk in. Seats get taken around you. The silence becomes louder than any insult, and many players never recover from it. There's also a deep, almost tribal rule about how you play the game itself. Everyone in the NFL understands that this sport is violent, but there's a line that isn't supposed to be crossed. Hits to the knees are one of the most unforgivable acts in football. When a defender goes low and takes out a player's legs, especially a quarterback, it's seen as a threat to that player's livelihood. You're not just tackling him. You're trying to take food off his family's table. When players do that intentionally, they don't just face fines from the league. They face retaliation from their own teammates, sometimes quietly in practice, sometimes very publicly on game day. This culture of protection becomes most intense around the quarterback. The franchise quarterback is the golden child of every locker room. He is the financial engine of the team. His health is worth more than any one defender's pride. That's why touching him in practice is treated like a crime. Even accidental contact can lead to shouting, shoving, or worse. Defensive players are taught to pull up, to fall away, to do anything except risk injuring the man who keeps everyone employed. The moment a defender forgets that rule, he finds out very quickly how alone he is. Hierarchy also dictates how players treat each other off the field. Veteran stars are expected to take care of their teammates, especially the men who protect them. Offensive linemen are notorious for judging quarterbacks based on their generosity. A cheap gift is remembered just as clearly as a lavish one. Some quarterbacks have given out custom Rolex watches. Others have bought luxury trucks or handed out stacks of cash. One even famously gave his line samurai swords engraved with their names. These gifts aren't just thank yous. They're statements about leadership. A quarterback who doesn't show appreciation is quietly judged no matter how many touchdowns he throws. Money, however, is also used to humble. The rookie dinner is one of the most legendary rituals in the NFL. It starts as a joke and ends as a financial ambush. Veterans choose the restaurant. Veterans order the most expensive food and drinks. And when the bill arrives, it goes straight to the rookies. Undrafted players pay a base amount. Drafted players pay according to where they were picked. The higher you were drafted, the bigger your share. First-round picks have walked away with bills that would bankrupt normal people. But complaining is not an option. That dinner is designed to strip away ego and remind new players that their money doesn't make them powerful yet. Even celebrations are controlled by the unwritten code. Dancing on an opponent's logo is considered one of the most disrespectful things you can do. That logo represents the team's identity, history, and pride. When players step on it, pose on it, or mock it, they are inviting retaliation. That's why when teams do it, they often do it knowing full well what's coming. It's not about showmanship, it's about sending a message, and those messages get remembered long after the final whistle. There are also rules about silence. What happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. Stories about teammates, arguments, injuries, or personal struggles are never supposed to leak. The moment a player becomes known as someone who talks to the media about internal issues, his days are numbered. Teams might tolerate losing. They will not tolerate betrayal. That's why players who expose dysfunction often find themselves traded or released shortly after speaking out. Even the way players practice is governed by these invisible laws. Taking cheap shots in practice is one of the fastest ways to become hated. Hitting too hard, finishing plays when everyone else has stopped, trying to show off at someone else's expense. Those things get remembered. And in a sport where everyone is one bad block away from a torn ligament, respect in practice is non-negotiable. The strangest part of all this is that none of it is officially acknowledged. The league talks about professionalism and respect, but it's the players who enforce it. Coaches may have playbooks, but the locker room has its own constitution. And the players who thrive are the ones who understand it without being told. For every superstar who dominates headlines, there are dozens of talented players who disappeared because they never learned these rules. They talked too much. They disrespected the wrong veteran. They didn't understand that the NFL is less like a job and more like a tribe. The league may be built on billion-dollar deals, but it runs on loyalty, fear, and unspoken agreement. And the men who survive longest aren't just the fastest or strongest. They're the ones who know exactly when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to fall in line. Because in the NFL, talent gets you noticed, but the code decides if you get to stay. And once you see how this hidden code controls everything, it becomes impossible to watch the NFL the same way again. Every hit, every contract, every sudden trade starts to look less random and a lot more calculated. These are the stories the league never wants fans to think about, even though they shape everything we see on Sundays. If you want more deep dives into the secrets, scandals, and power games behind sports and celebrity culture, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story is even crazier than this one.